lost the man who, with his buddies, invented the whole genre of music that so many of us hold dear and play and try to expand upon. But without Ozzy Osbourne and Black Sabbath, hard to imagine any of this exists.
Hours after a mysterious package landed on a rock journalist's doorstep, the man who sent it was already being eulogized online. Not for the first time either. Ozzy Osbourne, the guy tabloids keep trying to bury, had sparked another wave of "it's over" headlines, and nobody could agree on what was real. So what was inside that box? And why does every final bow around Ozzy feel more like a cliffhanger than a curtain call? Here's the pattern. Disaster, rumor, rally, repeat. Fans brace for the worst, media circles like vultures, and Ozzy somehow limps back on stage with a grin that says, "Not yet." This video isn't a funeral march, it's a guided tour through the 9 lives of the Prince of Darkness, the myths that refuse to die, and the softer moments he never bragged about. Because the story behind that cane from the mystery package and the show that had everyone whispering, "That's it," might just rewrite the way you think about rock legends. And if you've ever found yourself doom-scrolling through a wave of RIP Ozzy posts, you'll want to hear how those hoaxes started and why they keep working. But before the gossip, before the quad crash, before the reality show madness, there was a fired singer everyone assumed was finished. They were wrong. Late 70s. He's out of Black Sabbath, fired for being too out of control by a band that practically invented heavy doom. Think about that for a second. Record execs quietly closed doors. Friends braced for the worst. He was living in a haze of bottles and bad decisions, holed up in a hotel room, barely speaking, barely moving. The industry called it Ozzy was done. Then a weird thing happened. A guy named Don Arden wouldn't let go. His daughter Sharon Arden, soon to be Sharon Osbourne, saw something the world didn't. They pull Ozzy out of the fog, pair him with Randy Rhoads, the prodigy with a Les Paul that sounded like a chainsaw and a symphony. Suddenly, there's a band, a plan, and a title that felt like an in-joke. Blizzard of Oz. Except the joke was on everyone else. The album rips, Crazy Train becomes an anthem, and Ozzy goes from washed-up liability to solo juggernaut in the span of a few months. But that success came with a deep cut. Dependence didn't vanish because the charts smiled. This was a man building a castle while the ground underneath him shook. Every tour was chaos, every headline a gamble. Still, against the bets and the whispers, he kept moving. The lesson? People love to declare endings. Ozzy prefers reruns, with extra distortion. And just when he'd proved everyone wrong, fate reached for the mute button in a literal flash of metal and dirt. The first reel, He Might Not Make It headline, wasn't about music at all. It was about a wrecked machine in his own backyard. You know the one. December 8th, 2003. A cold day, a quad bike, a simple ride gone sideways. Ozzy flips, hits the ground hard, and the world goes silent. He's flown out in critical condition. Broken collarbone, cracked ribs, vertebrae injuries. Surgeons go to work while fans hit message boards, refreshing every few seconds, praying for a miracle or bracing for confirmation of the worst. News anchors start prepping retrospective packages. Radio DJs choke up mid-sentence. For a few hours, maybe days depending on your source, it felt like the Prince of Darkness had finally run out of lives. But he didn't. He wakes up. He jokes with doctors. He complains about hospital food. Classic Ozzy. Recovery wasn't quick, it was brutal. Metal rods, therapy, patience. Yet within months, he's back in front of cameras. Voice a little raspy, posture a little stiff, but eyes still mischievous. The crash became another chapter, not the epilogue. And here's the kicker. That wasn't even the only brush with the edge. Years later, more surgeries, more recovery, cartilage and screws stacking up like a hardware store bill. Each time, the rumor mill spun. Each time, he clawed back. That crash also flipped something in the public mind. Ozzy wasn't invincible. He was human, breakable, which made what came next even stranger. Instead of retreating into myth, he walked straight into your living room and let you watch the chaos up close. Ready to meet the most unlikely reality star of the 2000s? 2002 MTV. The Osbournes drops like a grenade into pop culture. 1 minute Ozzy is the guy your parents warned you about. The next, he's mumbling through grocery lists on national television. The mansion is a circus. Dogs everywhere. Sharon running the operation like a general with lipstick, kids firing off censored tirades, and Ozzy in a bathrobe trying to find the remote. Metal elitists screamed betrayal. Millions of viewers just screamed with laughter, and then tuned in again next week. Here's the twist. The show didn't ruin Ozzy's mystique. It reframed it. The bat-biting, cross-wearing frontman turned out to be kind of adorable. He was vulnerable, funny, confused by technology, swearing at everything. People who would never touch a Sabbath record suddenly felt protective of this shuffling, lovable chaos machine. Ratings soared. Awards followed, and Ozzy, for all his grumbling about cameras, rode that wave all the way to the bank. But there was a cost. Public life magnifies everything. The stumbles, the slurred words, the tremor in his hands. Some fans whispered, right before he did though, he gave us one more masterclass in reinvention. He let the world laugh with him, not at him. Still, laughter doesn't cure nerve issues. And when the diagnosis dropped, the internet divided into two camps, mourners and motivators. Both were loud. Neither knew what would actually happen next. January 2020. Ozzy sits down on TV and says it plainly. He's been dealing with a form of Parkinson's. Not a headline grab, not a pity play, just a man tired of letting rumors do the talking. Fans cried, prayed, argued. Some insisted he retire immediately. Others begged for one last show, one final scream of all aboard. The truth landed somewhere in the middle. Tours were postponed, rescheduled, postponed again. Headlines jumped the gun. Final tour announced. Ozzy cancels everything. Is this the end? Meanwhile, he kept working. Studio sessions between treatments, interviews between procedures, a stubborn refusal to let an acronym define him. If you watched closely, you saw something else. A family rallying like a pit crew around a damaged race car. Sharon fielded calls, Kelly hyped releases, Jack cracked jokes. Ozzy powered through injections and infusions, grimacing off camera, joking on camera. And then the pandemic hit, framing everything in isolation and uncertainty. Suddenly, everyone felt a little shaky, a little mortal, a little trapped. Ozzy's situation became relatable, not just legendary. People stuck at home threw on old records, remembered why they cared, and waited. Would he step back on a stage? Could he? The answer, as usual, wasn't simple. He couldn't do full tours, but he could still stun the world with a single appearance. And when he did, it wasn't in a dusty club. It was on a global stage, watched by millions. That's where we're heading next, when a home city, a huge ceremony, and a tiny window of time collided to prove the fire wasn't out. Birmingham, August 2022, the Commonwealth Games closing ceremony. Darkness, a riff, a voice that every metal fan can pick out in one syllable. All right now. For a couple of minutes, Ozzy stood tall under stadium lights and yelled into the night. The crowd exploded. Twitter melted. Every "he can't do it anymore" thread got torched in real time. He didn't need a whole set. He just needed one shot to remind the world who he was. Then came Patient Number 9, a record packed with legends. Iommi, Clapton, Beck, names that usually headline their own projects. Ozzy wove them into a late career victory lap that felt both haunted and heroic. Critics called it a miracle, a farewell, a flex. Fans just blasted it on repeat. But with every miracle came another rumor. There's a secret vault of tracks Sharon won't let out. He's using AI to smooth the vocals. He's not actually singing the high parts. People love conspiracies almost as much as they love comebacks. Meanwhile, Ozzy shrugged and kept showing up in the most unexpected places. An award show here, a podcast there, a studio photo with some rapper you didn't expect. This man refused to fade quietly. Those pop-ins mattered. They told fans, "I'm still here, even if you only see me for a minute." They told the industry, "Don't write me off." And they set the stage for the moment that truly cracked hearts. The moment that didn't happen on any stage at all. It happened in a quiet room with a cardboard box and a walking stick. Let's open it. Matt Pinfield has been around every backstage door that matters. Earlier this year, he was in recovery after a serious stroke, scared, exhausted, trying to relearn basic steps. Down in Florida, a mysterious package shows up at his family's place. No hype, no publicist alert. Inside, one of Ozzy Osbourne's personal canes. Not a souvenir from the merch booth, not a promo gimmick, a real tool he'd leaned on when his own body betrayed him. Ozzy heard Matt was struggling and reached straight into his own collection to send help. That's the part the headlines always miss. Behind the bat stories and the bleeps, there's a guy who quietly takes care of people. Crew members have told stories of him slipping them extra cash when shows got canceled. Fans talk about handwritten notes showing up months after meet and greets. He's rough around the edges, but the center? Softer than he ever let the cameras see. Matt said the cane hit him harder than any tribute could. It wasn't about the object, it was the message. I know what you're facing. Here's something that got me through. That stick symbolized more than balance. It symbolized survival, passed from one battered survivor to another. Moments like that don't trend. They seep into the memories of the people who lived them, but they explain why Ozzy's inner circle is so ferociously loyal, why Sharon fights like a general, why musicians who only met him once still talk about him like family. So if the core is that kind, why does the noise around him always sound so dark, so exaggerated? Because the myths are louder, and nobody attracts myths like Ozzy Osbourne. Let's separate a few of the loudest from the truth, or at least the closest thing to it. Sharon Osbourne isn't just the woman behind the man. She's the general behind the empire. When labels balked, she bulldozed. When managers fumbled, she fired them and did it herself. When lawsuits hit, she countersued with a smile sharp enough to cut glass. People love to say Ozzy survived because he's tough. True, but he also survived because Sharon built walls, hired medics, read contracts, and forced him to rest when he would have crawled on stage just to prove a point. Inside the Osbourne house, family meeting didn't mean hugs and cocoa. It meant strategies. What to announce, what to hide, how to spin a setback without lying. Kelly became the stylish hype machine, Jack the tech-savvy documentarian, and Sharon the gatekeeper. Together they formed a shield that let Ozzy be Ozzy, chaotic, impulsive, creative, without letting the outside world chew him up completely. That protection came with rumors, of course. Sharon's controlling him. She's milking the brand. Every strong manager gets that flack, especially when she's also the spouse. But look at the receipts. Careers resurrected, debts cleared, tours scaled up, deals negotiated that no traditional exec would have even tried. She turned a near-bankrupt rocker into a globally licensed icon with Funko Pops, TV deals, festival headliners, and yes, a reality show that printed money. And the War Room didn't just handle business, it handled health. Sharon coordinated doctors across continents. She negotiated insurance clauses that covered experimental treatments. She held the press at bay when he needed quiet, then unleashed him like a surprise weapon when he was ready. Love and logistics fused into one relentless force. So when you think about Ozzy's many resurrections, don't picture a lone wolf dragging himself out of a ditch. Picture a pack, loud, loyal, occasionally dysfunctional, dragging him with. That context matters because it sets the stage for why myths explode so easily. People outside the circle don't see the planning, only the spectacle. And spectacle is fertile ground for folklore, which brings us to the rumors that just won't die. Myth number 1, the bat. Yes, he bit it. No, it wasn't a satanic ritual. Someone tossed a real bat on stage. He assumed it was rubber, chomped, realized it wasn't, got shots. The end. But the legend grew because it fit the caricature. Wild man does wild thing. World gasps. Myth number 2, the dove. True story, he snapped a dove's neck in a label meeting. Was it planned? Not exactly. Was it outrageous? Absolutely. Did it lock in the unhinged brand forever? Pretty much. Every outrageous moment, planned or not, was amplified by a culture desperate for shock value. Then there are the hoaxes. Every few years, R.A.P. Ozzy trends, stock photos, fake TMZ screenshots, thousands of comments from people who didn't even click the link. It's become a twisted kind of routine, rumor, panic, correction, memes. Why him? Because he's been close enough to the edge that people believe it instantly. Because he's larger than life, so any extreme headline feels plausible. Add in the satanic panic of the 80s, lawsuits claiming his songs pushed kids over the edge, boycotts from religious groups, and you get a perfect storm of myth-making. The truth is less cinematic. He's a performer who pushed boundaries, a guy who made monstrous music, and sometimes monstrous choices, then paid for them with lawsuits, rehab, and apologies. So when the phrase "final bow" floated around this year, people didn't calmly wait for details. They projected, they assumed, they shared, because with Ozzy, the myth machine never sleeps. But inside that machine, something real was happening. A milestone show, a symbolic moment, and whispers, quiet ones, about what might still be left in the vault. That's where we go next. That back to the beginning performance, it felt like more than a gig. The set list leaned nostalgic. The vibe felt ceremonial. And the ending, him taking that slow, deliberate bow, made the internet collectively hold its breath. Some said, that's it. That's the moment. Others pointed out, Ozzy never says never. Behind the curtain, you hear different stories. Some insiders swear there are tapes, unfinished riffs, half-sung choruses, collaborations that never cleared samples. There's talk of a definitive documentary, one that digs deeper than the reality show ever could. There's even quiet chatter about tech-driven performances, holograms, AI-enhanced stems, immersive experiences where you stand on stage with Sabbath-era Ozzy screaming in your ear. Would he sign off on that? Depends on the day you ask. Sharon is pragmatic. If it honors him and thrills fans, she entertains it. Ozzy is sentimental. He likes things raw, loud, alive, but he's also fascinated by gadgets. Never forget, this is a dude who once embraced a camera crew in his living room. So what's next? Maybe a carefully curated goodbye project. Maybe a sudden guest spot that blows up your feed at 3 a.m. Maybe nothing until the next rumor. What's almost guaranteed is that the story won't just stop. Legends leak. They echo. Their families guard the gates, but the art keeps slipping through the cracks in the best way. And as long as people argue about what's real, Ozzy will keep trending. Which brings us to the only honest way to wrap this up. Not with a period, but with an ellipsis. Ozzy Osbourne isn't a straight timeline. He's a looping riff. Loud, jagged, unexpectedly tender in the quiet bars. Fired, fallen, fractured, diagnosed, yet somehow always back with a grin and a hook buried in your head. The media loves to declare him gone. Fans panic share condolences. Then he pops up, laughs, and drops something new. The Kane story proves the heart. The Bat story proves the chaos. The final bow proves he knows theater. Put it all together, and you get a man who built a persona out of darkness, but kept handing out light where it counted. That's why musicians across genres call him a godfather, why fans who never met him feel like they did, and why every rumor hits so hard, people care. So the next time a headline screams, "It's over," breathe. Remember the cycles. Remember the box on Matt Pinfield's porch, the surprise riffs, the stubborn spark behind those tired eyes. Ask yourself, is this truly the last note, or just the pause before another chorus? Drop your first Ozzy memory below. Song, show, myth you believed. Because his story isn't just his, it's ours, tangled up in noise, nostalgia, and the kind of resilience you can't manufacture. And if this was the last ride, then crank the volume, raise a glass, and let the echo do what echoes do. But don't be shocked if he taps the mic one more time and says, "I'm not dead yet." And maybe that's the real magic. Not immortality, but persistence. The stubborn beat that keeps thumping under the noise. If you're still here, you feel it too. Stick around. This ride rarely ends where anyone expects.